Hello everyone, Inquisitor Vaughn here, and in today's video we are going to talk about the Black Templars. The Black Templars are one of the most iconic Space Marine chapters in Warhammer 40k. They are a zealous and uncompromising chapter of Space Marines made from Rogal Dorn's lineage, and in today's video we are going to explore the lore of the Black Templars and how they came to be such a figurehead chapter in the Warhammer 40k universe. The origin of the Black Templars began with the Imperial Fist's Legion during the Great Crusade. The Emperor of Mankind would create 20 Astartes legions, each focusing on a specific aspect of warfare that would help him to gain control of Terra and eventually the galaxy. Amongst the legions, the 7th Legion was held with particular regard. Their actions observed during the latter years of the Unification Wars earned them the title of the Imperial Fist's Legion. Their specialization in warfare was conquest and the seizure of territory for the Emperor. They would conquer an enemy and build a citadel as a symbol of the Emperor's might on the conquered lands before moving on to conquer more land. Essentially, they were warrior masons, and by the end of the Unification Wars, they had built over 600 citadels across the surface of Terra. It was the 7th Legion that was responsible for combating the Psyker Windcaller clans on the Himalayan mountains, building the first bastion on what would later be called the Imperial Palace, the epicenter of the Emperor's empire. But the Imperial Fist had served another purpose besides the claiming of territory and building of citadels. The Imperial Fists served the Emperor as his Praetorians, his Astartes bodyguard, and they accompanied him wherever he and his custodian guard would travel. As such, they were shaped by the Emperor more so than most other legions, and the Emperor shaped them to be crusaders and the embodiment of the Imperial Truth. The Imperial Truth was basically the rejection of the supernatural and anything that was believed to exist outside the sphere of science and human understanding. The Emperor had created the Imperial Truth to redeem humanity from the depravity it lowered itself to during the Age of Strife due to their outdated primitive beliefs. Instead, he directed the power of faith and belief to humanity itself, its efforts, and its capabilities. The Imperial Fists were staunch defenders of the Imperial Truth, which was the core message of the Great Crusade, the Emperor's endeavor to reunite humanity across the stars. Though they did not spread the ideology with the religious fervor of the Word-Bearers Legion, they did incorporate secular but ritualistic practices that reinforced its message and its ideology. When the Imperial Fists were reunited with their Primarch Rogal Dorn, the transition of command was nearly perfect. Rogal Dorn changed little about the Legion since they were as the Emperor of Mankind had designed them to be. But as the Great Crusade progressed across the stars, the Legion was changed in a few ways. So Terra was claimed by the Imperial Fists as their homeworld, a right given to them by the Emperor himself. Though Terra was officially made the homeworld of the Imperial Fists, the 7th Legion largely became a void-based legion, with its fortress monastery being the immense star fortress called the Phalanx. The Phalanx was actually a relic station found near Inwit, the world that Rogal Dorn landed on during the scattering. When Rogal Dorn met with the Emperor, he gifted the Phalanx to him, but the Emperor returned it, wanting Dorn and his legion to use it. By becoming void-based, the Legion was able to continue claiming territory for Terra across the galaxy and spreading the conviction of the Imperial Truth in their actions and example. There were 2 units that were introduced to the Legion when Rogal Dorn took command of the 7th Legion, and both were centered around the Phalanx. First were the Phalanx Warders, also known as the Phalanxian Guard, whose primary responsibility was to protect the Phalanx from enemy forces who attempted to board the vessel. Pulled from the breacher companies of the Legion, the Phalanx Guard were armed with ceramite shields and power axes. Their training was grueling in its demands, and their focus was single-minded: slaughter anyone who dared trespass on the fortress monastery. These were brutal Marines who did not favor accolades and awards, but let the bodies of the enemy serve as a reward for their duty fulfilled. The second unit introduced to the Legion as its elite first company elements were the Templar Brethren, also called the Templars. The responsibility of the Templar Brethren was to protect the Temple of Oaths, one of the innermost sanctums of the Phalanx. Earlier I mentioned that the Imperial Fists, as warrior masons and Imperial Crusaders, had certain secular rituals that they would practice. These rituals and ceremonies often demonstrated core principles of the Great Crusade and the Imperial Truth, such as the power of belief in the human spirit, its conviction, its resolve, and determination. One of these ceremonies was the Oath of Moment. The Oath of Moment was basically a promise made before a commander or imperial authority that the individual or group making the Oath of Moment would commit to the completion of their mission no matter the cost. Either they would succeed or die trying. It was a declaration of complete and total commitment to a task at hand. From the moment that the oath was finished, the path forward for the person or group making the oath was set in stone, which is why it was called the Oath of Moment. Many legions practiced the Oath of Moment, but few besides the imperial heralds or the word bearers did so with such ceremony as the imperial fists. The legion had a section of the phalanx committed to this practice, the Temple of Oaths. The Templar Brethren were the guardians of the Temple of Oaths. But more than that, they embodied the highest values and strongest themes of the Imperial Fists Legion. They were the best of the best. Primarily close combat oriented, the Templar Brethren were armored and armed with the best weapons that Mars could provide. They were an elite brotherhood whose zeal, relentlessness, and determination were unmatched throughout the Legion. Though usually bound to the Temple of Oaths, when they were deployed in battle they led always from the front, as the fury of the Legion made manifest. Masters of the blade, an embodiment of the highest virtues of the 7th Legion, theirs was the honor of bearing Rogal Dorn's own personal heraldry, the Crusader's Cross. It would be these two units, the Phalanx Warders and the Templar Brethren, that would inspire two of the most aggressive of Imperial Fist successor chapters during the 40th millennium, but it would be the Templar Brethren that would serve as the foundation for the Black Templars. The Imperial Fist that would lead the chapter was a legendary legionnaire of the 7th, named Sigismund. The early history of Sigismund is obscured. What can be uncovered in scattered records was that Sigismund was from Terra and would join the Imperial Fist's Legion during the Unification Wars. Marked by a strong personal commitment and drive to protect the defenseless, and to himself be the wall that stood between humanity and all that threatened it, even before he was transformed into a space marine, Sigismund was notably daring and courageous. Something within him pushed him forward and challenged him to step up and never surrender, and sometimes this force manifested itself as a voice in his mind that would state, "If not you, then who?" Sigismund would be recruited into the Imperial Fists after enduring and surviving the Legion's brutal screening trials, and would develop a reputation as a master swordsman. Sigismund's mastery of the blade was extraordinary and horrifying. Those who saw him fight could barely follow his movements, and his control, focus, and ferocity earned him many titles amongst the other legions. He would always strive to perfect his abilities, even learning from Astartes of other legions. When in campaign alongside them, Sigismund could frequently be found sparring with the barbaric World Eaters in their dueling pits, earning the respect of such an aggressive and martial legion, even learning from them. It was from the World Eaters that Sigismund learned to have his sword chained to him so that he could never truly drop his weapon. Sigismund was said to have never formally been defeated in a duel, except for his loss against the Night Lord Jago Sevatarian, who dishonorably headbutted him during a duel. But even in this, Sigismund learned. Sigismund fought in many battles during the Great Crusade, climbing in rank and earning recognition from the elite brotherhood of the Templar Brethren. Even after being inducted into the Templars, Sigismund continued to prove himself and his zeal to the point that he was elected to not only be the leader of the Templar Brethren, but the first captain of the Imperial Fist's Legion. The trial for this was that Sigismund had to face each of the other Templar Brethren in close combat, either yielding or forcing them to yield. The trial took days, but one by one, though battered and bruised worse than he had ever been, Sigismund forced each of the Templar Brethren to yield, even facing off against the Templar dreadnought, Brother Appius. Unknown to him, Rogal Dorn had been watching the trial from the shadows the entire time, and upon successfully passing the trial, Sigismund would kneel before his Primarch and make his Oath of Moment before him, marking him as the first captain of the 7th Legion. When the War Master Horus Lupercal was corrupted by the forces of chaos and moved to betray the Emperor, it was a shock to many of the Primarchs. A retinue of loyalist marines from the traitor legions was rescued from their vessel, the Eisenstein, by the Imperial Fists, and the leader of the group, Nathaniel Garrow of the Death Guard, requested an audience with Rogel Dorn to alert him of the new developments with Horus. Dorn literally could not believe it and backhanded Garrow across the deck, nearly killing him before composing himself and resolving to investigate. Sigismund was there when this happened. It was also there that Sigismund would meet the imagist Euphrates Keeler. Rogel Dorn would later send Sigismund to investigate the claims made by Garrow and to assist the loyalists where he could. However, after a discussion with Euphrates Keeler, Sigismund would petition his Primarch to stay by his side instead. Dorn didn't understand this request, but he allowed it. See, the Imperial Truth was not the only belief system that was being spread during the Great Crusade. At opposites to it was the Imperial Creed, started by the particularly religious Primarch Logar Aurelian and his legion of word-bearers. It stated that the Emperor was a god to be worshipped by humanity. It stated that the Emperor protects, and those who believed in his divinity would receive his favor. These views were written down in a book called the Lectitio Divinatis, and copies were spread throughout the conquered worlds of the growing Imperium. Euphrates Keeler was a follower of the Imperial Creed, and so strong was her faith in it that it would grant her psychic powers that she would use in defense of herself and the crew aboard the Eisenstein. Euphrates Keeler would in fact become the first ever Imperial Saint of the Imperial cult. She had a conversation with Sigismund. His core was already shaken by seeing his Primarch's anger at the news about his brother's betrayal, and even Sigismund was having a hard time with it. But Keeler would speak to Sigismund privately and show him a vision of the future of the Imperium. She told him of two possible fates. One was that he died alone and forgotten on a random distant system, or that his fate was war and crusade eternal. Sigismund's core beliefs were already shaken, and he would experience a crisis of sorts. Sigismund would request to stay at his Primarch's side, believing in Keeler's prophecy that Dorn would need him at a crucial moment in the future, and this changed the projection of Sigismund's life in an extraordinary way. Eventually, Sigismund would let Rogel Dorn know why he asked to stay by the Primarch's side, that he had seen in Keeler's vision the future of the Imperium. At this, Rogel Dorn was not only infuriated, but he was disgusted and disappointed that Sigismund would listen to the visions of a psyker and let those visions guide his decisions. Sigismund would be banished from the Primarch's presence to fight on Mars to secure weapons for the upcoming battle, since the traitors themselves were heading to Terra. His mission on Mars was successful, and as the prophecy dictated, the Horus Heresy would take him back to Terra at his Primarch's side. During the siege of Terra, Rogel Dorn elected Sigismund to be the first Emperor's Champion. The Emperor's Champion was an exalted role, and his responsibility was to single out and challenge the champions of the traitor legions and kill them in close combat in defense of the Imperial Palace. At this point, Sigismund was no longer truly an Imperial Fist, for though he kept his rank as first captain of the Legion, Dorn himself had disowned him. But knowing Sigismund's skill with the blade and perhaps using his beliefs to his own favor, Rogel Dorn created a new designation which made Sigismund more than an Imperial Fist, but the Emperor's own champion. His armor was painted black in the tradition of the chaplains of the Legion, and he was given the Black Sword, which was created and bestowed to him by the Emperor himself. As the Emperor's champion, Sigismund would go on to slaughter countless Chaos champions with ease, possessed of a fervor and a zeal that could only be inspired by the Emperor. The Horus Heresy was won by the Loyalists, but at a steep cost. The near death and interment of the Emperor upon the Golden Throne. The dream of the Imperium in the Great Crusade was shattered, and the remaining Loyalist Primarchs would move with uncertainty into the future. Rubute Guilliman was made Lord Commander, and he demanded that the remaining legions be broken up into smaller chapters so that no one figure could wield the power of an Astartes legion. Rogel Dorn was strongly against this, and it almost led to another civil war, but finally he relented and broke up the Imperial Fists into several smaller chapters. One chapter that was created by Rogel Dorn was the Black Templars. The Black Templars would carry on the zeal and spirit of the Great Crusade into the future. The most zealous of the Imperial Fists, which included the remaining Templar Brethren, would be the first battle brothers of the Black Templars. Its chapter master, or High Marshal, would be the Emperor's champion himself, Sigismund. Thus began the legacy of the Black Templars in the 40th millennium. The Black Templars chapter embodied the highest virtues of the Imperial Fist Legion during the Great Crusade, mixed with the lessons of their chapter master Sigismund. Their heraldic colors would be black, white, red, and gold, and their heraldry would be the Crusader's Cross. Their war cry was an oath of moment in its own right: no pity, no remorse, no fear. The Black Templars' primary objective was to continue the Great Crusade where all others, even the Imperial Fist chapter, had abandoned it. There are quite a few unique elements of the Black Templars in comparison to the other successor chapters of the Imperial Fists. First is that the Black Templars have more Marines than the standard 1,000 demanded by Roboute Guilliman. Their numbers are closer to around 5,000 to 6,000 Space Marines, which effectively makes them a small legion instead of a chapter. The Black Templars are also unique in that they believe that the Emperor is a god. In this way, they fight in his holy name, both on a physical front, but also on a spiritual front. With the Imperial Truth's basic tenets proven to be lies during the Horus Heresy, namely that gods did exist in the warp along with malignant entities that strove to corrupt humanity, but with understanding and first-hand experience as to why the denial of their existence was necessary, the Black Templars are staunch defenders of the Imperial cult rather than the Imperial Truth, which barely held any weight in the 40th millennium. The chapter's founder experienced the Emperor's divinity for himself, and it was the Emperor's godlike powers that were preventing the Imperium from being consumed by darkness, even as his physical body rotted on the Golden Throne. The Black Templars' faith in the Emperor's divinity is absolute, and their conviction that the galaxy is the Emperor's to possess is without question. In this way, the Black Templars represent and embody some of the original ideals of the Great Crusade, mixed with the true nature of Rogel Dorn and the current reality of the 40th millennium. Just like the original Imperial Fist Legion, the Black Templars would be a void-based chapter. The Phalanx would remain in possession of the Imperial Fist chapter, but the Phalanx was not the flagship of the Imperial Fist Legion, only its fortress monastery. Each of the legions was given a massive flagship, and the Black Templars were given the actual flagship of the Imperial Fist Legion, the ancient Gloriana-class ship called the Eternal Crusader. So, just a warning, I'm about to say Crusade a lot. Crusade is to the Black Templars what Wolf is to the Space Wolves, meaning everything in every title mentions it in some way. The Black Templars are the Crusader chapter of all Crusader chapters. In fact, the chapter divides itself into primarily 3 groups of Templar forces called Crusades, led by marshals or captains. When a crusade's objective is complete, another crusade is announced immediately. For this reason, the Black Templars are both on the longest crusade ever fought by any Space Marine chapter, and they are, as a collective, fighting multiple crusades at once. Other unique elements of the Black Templars are that they have something called Crusader Squads. These are mixed squads of Templars, led by a Sword Brother or a veteran, and composed of Initiate Battle Brothers and Neophytes to the chapter. Crusader Squads are an almost tutorial arrangement where more experienced Marines of the chapter can guide the newer Neophytes in the way of battle. The chapter refers to its lieutenants as Castellans. It also doesn't have any librarians because they inherently distrust the warp and warp powers. For this reason, the Grey Knights are the only psychic Imperial force that they would fight besides. The Black Templars largely prefer close combat, so while ranged firepower is seen within the chapter, units like Devastator Squads are rare. The Black Templars also have a Land Raider pattern designed after their tenets of warfare, the Land Raider Crusader. The tradition of the Emperor's Champion continues within the Black Templars chapter, with each crusade having its own, chosen by the Emperor himself, and each Emperor's Champion also has their own black swords, serving as challengers to the enemy and destroyers of their opposition. High Marshal Sigismund would lead the Black Templars until he was slain at almost 1,000 years old by Abaddon the Despoiler. The current High Marshal of the Black Templars chapter, is a figure called Helbrecht. Clad in golden armor and carrying a sword made from shards of Rogol Dorn's own sword, Helbrecht is the High Marshal of the Black Templars. Helbrecht can be described as a combination of Rogol Dorn and Sigismund, so much so that I actively counter the idea that Rogol Dorn, the Primarch, needs to return to 40k. We don't really need him back because we have Helbrecht. Helbrecht commands the Eternal Crusader Gloriana class ship and is the greatest void warfare commander of all Space Marines. His path in life was quite similar to Sigismund's. He excelled in the Black Templars and eventually was inducted into the Sword Brethren, the veterans of the chapter, and soon after he was promoted once more to High Marshal of the Black Templars. He was similar to Dorn in that his temperament was the temperament that Rogol Dorn kept under a stone composure. He is passionate, uncompromising, stubborn, determined, and defiant, all like Rogol Dorn. He is also vengeful. Helbrecht is missing a hand, and it was removed by the Necron Pharaon, Imhotep the Stormlord. Helbrecht would eventually get his vengeance against Imhotep, but the fact that it was his hand that is missing is, I think, a nod to the lore of Rogol Dorn, since the only part of the Primarch's body that was recovered was his hand. Meaning that, if Rogol Dorn were to ever come back, he would be missing a hand, like Helbrecht. The Black Templars are one of the most aggressive chapters of Astartes in regards to the pursuit of war against the alien, the heretic, and the traitor. They are also one of the most feared, and all Space Marines are feared, even the Salamanders, but the Black Templars are feared because of their degree of conviction. The Black Templars are not about reason, they're not about making sense, they are about persecution, and once you fit the description of an alien, a heretic, or a traitor, there is nothing that can convince them otherwise. The Black Templars have participated in almost every war involving the Imperial cult, basically meaning every holy war. During the Age of Apostasy, they fought in the War of the Beast, answering the Last Wall Protocol, fighting in defense of Terra, and contributing some of their number to rebuilding the Imperial Fists afterwards. Helbrecht himself commanded the fleets above Armageddon during the Third War of Armageddon, while Grimaldus, renowned High Chaplain of the Black Templars and hero of Hell's Reach, led the human forces against the Orc assault on the ground. The Black Templars chapter are an accomplished, notorious, and feared Space Marine chapter that embodies some of the best aspects of the old spirit of 40k, from pseudo-religious aesthetics, zealotry to the point of violent ignorance, war without end, and the belief in humanity's dominance over the galaxy. They are not only one of my 3 favorite Imperial Fist successors, but they are one of my favorite Space Marine chapters overall. And that has been my deep dive into the Black Templars chapter. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But without anything else to say, Inquisitor Vaughn out. Remember, the Emperor protects, and the future is successor.